So I'm a kid, grew up in the west suburbs of Sydney. I grew up in Punchbowl, went to school in Lakemba, and I did my last 2 years of school in Bankstown. My mum is Irish Catholic, and my dad is Greek. They met here in Australia. Dad's Greek Orthodox, but I became a Catholic because the Irish are pretty
Sturdy.
solid on that sort of stuff. Mum was a huge influence in my life in terms of, she didn't push me, but she was very much a shining light for me. She came from a terrible background, and she didn't want to have that repeated in her life, so she looked to change the way her children lived their life relative to her. My dad came from Greece, which was war-torn when he left. Germany occupied Greece, and then they had the Civil War in Greece. Dad left during that period. He came here with his 5 brothers, his dad and his mum. So Dad came from absolute abject poverty into Australia, and he worked in a factory his whole life. So my dad and my mum, to a large extent, didn't want me to repeat the same life that they had had. They encouraged me to go to university. My mother dragged me to university. I was always seeing my dad in and out of different businesses. I mean, he worked in a factory. That was his daytime job. And then in the evenings, he was always trying out new things. My first experience with being in business was I was probably about 14 years of age, I guess. And I was watching a show on television. In those days, all the movies are on Sunday afternoon. And I was watching this show. It was like a cowboy sort of movie. And I remember seeing this guy smoking a pipe that it was made out of a corn cob.
Mm.
I was a pretty curious kid, and in my front garden, we had these, I don't know what the plant was. I think it was a hydrangea, and I used to cut the hydrangea, and I worked out that inside the hydrangea, when it dried out, you could actually get the coat hanger wire and push the middle of the hydrangea out, and you just leave a nice, like a straw made out of timber. So what I did is I got a knife, which Mum would have been horrified about at the time, but I trimmed the edges so it was the pointy at one end and it was hollow at the other end. You could use it like a straw. And I went and got one of our old cricket stumps, because everyone played cricket in the paddock behind me, and I cut a piece off the cricket stump, and I got a hand drill and I drilled the middle out, and I drilled a hole in it, and I stuck the bit of dried out hydrangea into it, and I made myself a pipe. Now, no one in my family smoked, and I didn't realise it was tobacco. I sort of had a bit of a sense it was tobacco, but I wouldn't know where to buy tobacco. And in those days, there were no shopping centres. I mean, the local shop, if you want to go shopping, there was 3 or 4 shops. You go down there and shop. And I went down and bought some tea leaves. And I put some tea leaves in this pipe, and I lit it, and I smoked it. And I was just copying what they were doing on this TV show. And it was fun. I didn't know whether it was good for me, bad for me, whatever. Anyway, I took it to school. And my mates at school thought it was unreal. And so I said, I'll make you one. One of my good friends, I made him one, and I charged him for it. And then all the other kids started asking me for them. But then I started supplying the tea. Now, I was telling them this is what you put in the pipe. I don't think they knew it was tea. I was bringing it in a jar that I took out of the tea thing at home. And I was making money out of selling the tea. So I'd set them up with a pipe, and then they needed the tea because, there's no point in a pipe if you haven't got something to cook in it. But the teachers got onto it, and I got into trouble. And my mum called me at home. She said, look, I've just been called. What are you doing? You can't be doing that. I must have been around 11 when I was doing this. And I remember I was at a little school called St. John's, Lakemba. So at that age, I was either in year 7 or year 6 or 7, around that territory. So there you go. That was my first introduction to business.
You haven't met Kerry Packer yet. The deal's almost done. You need his final stamp of approval because it's a large sum of money. And so you're walking into his office on Park Street, you said?
Park Street, yeah.
What happened there?
I had my best suit on, of course.
Were you nervous?
Oh, very nervous. Yeah. And I was waiting for him. He kept me waiting for a couple of hours. I then got in. I got invited to his office. His invitation to his office was by him. It was sort of fairly gruff. It definitely wasn't inviting. I didn't feel welcome. He's not one to be smiling all the time, or sort of didn't give that sort of friendly vibe to many people. I mean, I got it later on in life, but not at the time. I guess I was just another person passing by, and he was going to invest, not going to invest. That probably happened to him his whole life. Mm. His office is quite incredible. I mean, for me, I'd never seen anything like this before in my life. And it's a bit like what we said earlier about going to university. I discovered something all of a sudden. I went, whoa, this is what the big dog's office actually looks like.
I'm in the lion's den.
This is what literally in the lion's den, because behind me were paintings by artists of actual lions attacking antelopes and shit like that. You know, like literally blood everywhere and alligators pulling, you know, deers or something, bisons or whatever it is into the water. Like it was pretty scary, like behind me.
Do you think he had a bit of an intimidation play as to in his arsenal,
No,
or that was
look,
just who he was?
hard to work that out. My gut feeling is he actually liked it. He liked it. That was something that appealed to him in his world. And behind him, though, on his shelf was pictures of his family and his, you know, best friend Bruce Gingell and David's father, and but also pictures of people like Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and people like that too, like with him, you know, because he knew everybody. He was the big guy. He sort of walked me into the room, and he just waited to see how I reacted and responded to nothing.
He just stared at you.
He just stood there at the beginning, and I just stood there. I didn't know whether I should sit down or not, because I went to Catholic school. You don't do what you do what you're told. You don't sit down until you're invited to sit down. So I just stood there at attention on the other side of his desk. He then ushered me to sit down. Didn't say any words. He just had pointed out a seat, and the seat was very low relative to the table. And so I felt like I was sort of looking up over the big desk, and it was a huge desk. And he sat on this massive big chair, and you know, we had all these paintings around me. And he then proceeded to take his shoes and socks off, put his feet up on the desk, which basically meant I own this territory. That immediately stamped on me whose territory I was in, made it pretty clear. He lit up a cigarette, and he just stared at me. He never said a word this whole time. I don't know how long this went on for. It could have been 10 minutes, but he smoked his cigarette and just stared at me. It was like he was questioning me without saying anything. He was looking at me, waiting to see what my responses would be. The ash on his cigarette was getting longer and longer and longer, and the cigarette part was getting smaller, but somehow he's managed in his really steady hand not to allow that ash to drop off the cigarette. And that was the mesmerizing thing about it. I was just staring at this cigarette, and I was too scared to breathe, because I thought if I breathe and I blow the cigarette ash off, I don't know what he was going to do to me. I might end up being one of those paintings on the wall. He put the cigarette and he said to me, son, what did you think about the due diligence period? And I said, it was pretty tough. You know, your guys did a good job on me. You got the price down by half. And he said to me, look, I really don't give a shit about all the due diligence, all those experts. He said, I don't care about them. He said, I'm going to do my due diligence, and we're going to do it now, and I've got 3 questions for you. That was my first meeting with Kerry Packer. I put a playbook out based on the 10 things that Kerry always asked me.
Yeah.
Like, what are the 10 things that every single month, he didn't necessarily ask him in any particular order, but there was 10 things he hit on every single month about the business, and he wanted to know the answers about it. And he remembered what you talked about last month. So he built this discipline into my business, into my head anyway, about how to run a business as opposed to how to set them up. The first question was, he basically wanted to know, he said, what business are you in? And I thought to myself, why would you ask me that question? My business is called Wizard Home Loans. It's pretty obvious I'm in the home loan business. And before I could even say anything, he just said, don't say fucking home loans. So straight up, I was wrong-footed. Straight up, I didn't realise at the time, and I thought about it later on, but he's one of those people who will put you on the wrong foot straight away. And that's the most obvious answer. But he was asking me a question, he already knew the answer he wanted, and the answer wasn't what I was thinking. So straight away, he's dealing the cards out to me, putting me in a position where I don't know what's going on here. Kerry believed in repeating the same processes. He was very process-driven. He didn't want to get involved in the process, but he was very interested in being involved in the process. A good example was, he asked me what my business purpose was day one. Every month, he wanted to know, has the purpose changed? In other words, not my purpose, but has my customer's purpose changed? Is there a new expectation from the customer? I mean, is there something new that you should be appealing to?
Should always be keeping your finger on the pulse of your customer.
Correct.
It should be live. It changes.
Ringing them up, finding what they like, what they don't like, talking to the branches, what are the customers doing? Instead of me just providing product to my branches who then go and sell to the customer, I don't dictate what a customer wants. My branches are the people on the ground. They know. So he wanted to know, Mark, are you visiting the branches? Mark, are you calling customers? Mark, do you know what your customers need? Do you know what your branches need? What are they telling you?
It's so interesting.
And Mark, is your product relevant to the marketplace? So it's about relevancy and markets change. Product and services markets change.
You have to be live. Business is a living thing. It evolves,
Totally.
it moves.
He'd always talk to me on the topic of funding. Always talk to me on the topic of funding. Do you have enough money to do the strategic things you want to do? And where are you going to get it from? In other words, how much money have we got left? How can you manage your way forward? And right now in the COVID period, this is a really important thing. The first thing is I've got to have a message. And I've got to have a story. So there was a story. And the story was I was a 42-year-old guy from the western suburbs, and I was doing ads on television, simply dressed like this, actually, with a T-shirt and underneath a V-neck jumper and a pair of jeans, sitting in front of a camera, doing ads on television, saying how I'm taking on the banks. I mean, so there's a story in that. Who is this guy? You've got to know your message. And the message has got to be relevant to your customer. You can't be building the message yourself and thinking, well, I know everything about everybody.
Can't be relevant to you. It's your customer.
Correct. It might be relevant to you because it's relevant to your customer, but you've got to confirm that. What does my customer actually want in terms of the product? In other words, what's the purpose of the customer coming to me? What do they want as opposed to what do I think they want? Then how do I transform that into a message? So what is the message that conveys that emotion that the customer wants? So back in the wizard days, there was no judgments, just home loans, because customers did not want to be judged. They felt like the banks judged them. They just wanted the home loan. They just wanted to go in there, see the bank manager get a home loan and buy the home. That's all they cared about. So we come up with a strap line. Our message was no judgments, just home loans. We were confined to just television and radio in those days, newspapers. So we didn't have the ability to just put out today like they do today. You can build that messaging through Instagram and all the platforms, Facebook, etc.
Which is the next step. Find the mediums to share your message.
Correct. And you can share and you can actually build on the message. So you don't have to just come up with a strap line. You can do it in 30 seconds, or you can do it on your grid for 60 seconds on Instagram, or you can do it in your stories, or you can do it on IGTV for longer periods. I think the message for everybody listening is, and then one of the things that you can build a brand and a proposition much faster today than I built it, and for far less money, but it's the same thing. You're doing it more often, more mediums, and for less money. So understand what the message is, what's the emotion, how are you going to put that into words and or visuals, work out the mediums you're going to push it through, and if it's not working, understand your data. Make sure that if you're using Google AdWords, or if you're using Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, make sure that you use the analytics available. Maybe find someone who can give you some additional analytics if you need to. Look at what's working and what's not working. Keep repeating it. It's repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
And consistency.
All the time. You don't stop.